This is the gas blowback B&T MP9 by KWA, and I've dumped little over 1,000 euros worth of parts into this build. I'll give the full cost breakdown in the end. Now let's dive right in. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So a little over a year ago, I posted a video where I customized the exterior of this thing, adding a Holo, flashlight, DBAL, grip, sling, and a suppressor. This time, I'm upgrading it internally, using all WIITECH parts to turn it full metal. That means a longer barrel, a new hop-up unit, lighter springs, a full metal trigger system, and a steel nozzle system. But before we get into the build, I've got an exciting announcement. I've just launched a brand new YouTube channel dedicated to cosplay, 3D printing, and cinematic films. If you're into creating cosplay suits, props, dioramas, or anything 3D printing related, be sure to check it out and subscribe. Now back to the video. Here are all the parts going into this build. Aluminum enhanced loading nozzle chassis, enhanced buffer, steel disconnector since the stock one tends to break a lot, metal pin to hold the carrier in place, new nozzle recoil springs and butt pad springs, a hardened steel hammer which is a huge upgrade, part 151, 60% lighter trigger spring, a retrofit kit with a longer 345mm inner barrel and a full hop-up unit, a full metal bolt system including the nozzle chassis and carrier. This is how the replica looked in the last video, and externally it's gonna look the same by the end of this video. Now let's get disassembling. First, I need to make sure the magazine is out and there's no BBs inside the chamber. Then I remove all the attachments. I'm sorry for flagging the camera here, but it's so you can see the screw on the upper receiver. It has to come out to separate the body. Next, there's a button in the back that holds the recoil spring. It needs to be pushed in and then the upper receiver comes apart. I'll set that aside for now and remove the charging handle. I'm also taking off the stock to make it easier to work on since it'll be shorter. Later on, this thing is going to need a full cleaning and greasing too. Next, I take out the takedown clamp spring which locks the carrier in place by the muzzle base. Then I remove the muzzle base clamp and push in the side levers to detach the base. With that done, the whole thing comes apart. Now I take out the hammer assembly. Here you can see how the barrel and nozzle sit inside the carrier. I'll be upgrading the barrel to the longer one I showed earlier later in the video. Using a plastic hammer, I remove the pins inside the carrier to access the nozzle. Since everything is going full metal, every single piece has to come apart. Here's a close look at how the nozzle works. To start, the trigger spring needs to come out so it doesn't launch itself across the room when I remove the rest of the trigger assembly. Now the MP9 has a ton of tiny parts that seem way too eager to escape. If you're doing this at home, be careful. Hold your hand over any small components, otherwise they might go skydiving. Like the sneaky little E-clip for example. Once again, I'm bringing out the trusted plastic hammer to push out the two pins holding the hammer housing. Since my disconnector is officially toast, I have to manually wiggle it forward to push the hammer. Then I pry the trigger bar to the side and pull it out. Next, I remove the trigger bar plunger. Using a small screwdriver, I take out 2 tiny components. Not gonna lie, I still have no idea what they're called, but they're coming out anyway. I also removed the disconnector spring because, well, I would rather it not spring into my face. Now I can push out the pins, which are annoying to deal with, but once that's done, the hammer housing comes right out. A quick wipe down with a cloth to clean up all the grease. And then I start disassembling the housing. The 2 screws in the back secure the recoil buffer plate. I clean off all the extra grease on the hammer, then pop it out by pushing to the sides. Next up, the disconnector. To remove it, I unscrew the impact housings and take out the hammer reset block. Once everything is out, I grease it up and put it back together. And that's the entire system stripped down. Now on to the fun part, reassembly. Basically, I'm reversing everything, except this time I'm upgrading all the parts with steel and adding grease along the way. First, the disconnector goes back in. And a pro tip, don't lose a tiny E-clip on the disconnector pin because finding a replacement is going to be hard. Next, I reinstall the disconnector spring, making sure it's snug. Then I installed a new steel hammer with the spring pointing downward. After that, I installed the new CNC enhanced buffer. At first, I installed it incorrectly, facing upwards instead of downwards, so I had to reach out to WIITECH for clarification and then fix it afterward. One thing I hadn't removed earlier was the Sear housing. Just like the rest of this build, there's absolutely no instructions for it. Turns out it has to be pried out from the bottom. Once I have it out, I remove the tiny Sear pin and take out the Sear itself, so I can install my upgraded steel Sear. Before putting it back, I clean off any residual grease and use super lube to grease everything up. I also grease the inside of the lower receiver. Pretty much grease anywhere metal touches metal, and reinstall the Sear. Any leftover grease on my hands goes onto the hammer housing before putting that back into place. It's critical to make sure the hammer spring sits properly in its hole before securing the pins. With the pins locked back in, I reinstall the trigger bar after applying some grease and make sure the trigger and springs move smoothly. Now for the trigger spring. That goes back in, followed by some extra grease on the housing. With the trigger assembly done, it's time for the bolt and nozzle. Here's a look at all the parts going in, along with the old bolt carrier for comparison. The new steel loading nozzle chassis fits inside the loading nozzle along with the springs on top, which are painfully annoying to install because one of them sits at an angle, meaning it needs to twist to fit properly. Check out the finish on this carrier, just beautiful. After applying some metal grease, everything gets installed. Be sure the nozzle actually snaps back into place like it's supposed to. And finally, the new barrel and hop-up unit. Here's the comparison. The new barrel measures out at 345mm, much longer than the original. This should translate to a higher velocity, meaning better accuracy, and if you're lucky, potentially increased range. I start by installing the new barrel onto the carrier and securing the muzzle base. A generous amount of grease goes on next, as these parts need it the most. Then I installed the new bolt system. It looked easy in the video, but lining it up for the first time was a real challenge, thanks to the new barrel and hop-up. And just when I thought I was done, the muzzle base clamp gave me even more trouble, but in the end I made it work. Next up, the recoil spring and guide rod go in. After some final greasing, the upper receiver is ready to be installed. Now we are one step closer to bringing this beauty out to the field. With the core build complete, I finally get to install the attachments. First, the suppressor. It fits perfectly, covering the barrel right up to the tip. Then the suppressor cover, followed by my trusty flashlight. Here's a clip from an old video of me installing it. Now the DBAL goes in, and lastly the sling. These are the VMP mags I run with it. And with that, the build is officially complete. Next time, I'll be making a before-buy review of the MP9, so if you want to know all the pros and cons, be sure to tune in. Now let's do a cost breakdown. Starting off strong, 241 euros for the used MP9 with 2 magazines that I bought from Belgium. 2 Vorsk 48-round mags at 43 euros each, bringing that to 86. As for the attachments, the DBAL A2 red laser was 38 euros, the flashlight was 25, front grip was 4.5, sling was 10, the EOTech-style Holo was 35, and the protective glass for the Holo was 3 euros. As for the performance upgrades, the TNT retrofit kit was 152, the WIITECH carrier was 67.5, loading nozzle was 70, the recoil spring 13, part 151 was 29.5, part 34 was 11.9, the enhanced buffer was 22, the loading nozzle chassis was 32 euros, the disconnector was 48, and lastly the loading nozzle recoil spring was 10. For shipping and tax, in total was 144.7. I did have to buy some of the parts through WIITECH itself, which I had to pay shipping and extra tax for. And also, all these parts came from a bunch of different places, so I had to pay shipping for all those separately. So the MP9 was 241, and the mags were 86. Parts and attachments were in total 455.9 euros, and attachments are 115.5. And that brings the grand total to 1,043 euros, or 1,174 bucks. And was it worth it? Hell no. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button so I can build even crazier stuff next time.